Hey everybody, welcome into the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. This is the practice report brought to you by Byers Auto. That is Tim May. That's Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. We are getting set for top-ranked #1 Ohio State, undefeated, heading into Indianapolis for the Big Ten title game, the rematch against the Wisconsin Badgers. And I'm so sick of hearing the word rematch, but that's been the #1 theme that we've heard all week long. Man. Get ready for round two. Ohio State has only done it once since 1975, and as I talked about on your podcast the other day, I really couldn't care less about those comparisons either.
Got to have something to hang on.
But what has told you over the last 2 days that Ohio State doesn't really care that much that they've got to do this again against Wisconsin?
Has told me that they don't really care that much.
That they're not worried about it. I mean,
I think when you beat a team 38-7, you can pound into people's heads, how much of a tougher task this is going to be than it was last time. But then when you remember from the post game how, for example, Justin Fields said, with better conditions they probably could have scored at least 50, and you kind of bring that up. I brought that up to Justin, in the press conference the other day, and he kind of, didn't really want to go there. But this is what it is in modern football. In these modern conferences, you have to have a championship game, right? Yeah. I mean, Baylor's playing Oklahoma again. Go figure. But that was a hell of a game.
Right.
This one wasn't the first time around. Now, this wasn't progressively as the game went on. This was like Ohio State had to cut that tree down, but they did cut the tree down, and now they've got to cut the same tree down again.
I guess one thing that stood out.
Greg Schiano reference.
Yeah, well,
nice.
Chopping wood. His was chopping wood.
Now that he's back at Rutgers officially,
start dropping all the contextual
chopping
Schiano
wood
clues.
After that brief tenure with the Patriots, he's back now in the Big Ten and back with Rutgers. But I think, Berm, the reason I bring it up with this rematch is that you've got guys like Ryan Day, Jeff Hafley, Greg Madison that have spent time in the NFL where, as Tim said, this is the new age in college football. Well, that's a way of life in the NFL. You have to make adjustments for the first meeting, and your division opponents, you see them twice a year. And I think that's why I don't sense any concern about the motivation or what they might have learned in October that they can use this time.
Yeah, and I'll say it like this. I don't think it matters who they're playing on Saturday. So it doesn't, if it would have been Wisconsin or Minnesota, the rematch factor of this is sort of overblown. I think what's undersold here is how difficult it is to play 3 straight games like Penn State, Michigan, and now this game.
Sure, yeah.
I think that's a bigger storyline than the fact that it's a rematch, because
Agreed.
Who cares? The rematch itself isn't that interesting to me because Ohio State is a significantly better team than Wisconsin. Now, how does a team full of 19 and 20-year-olds keep themselves motivated, emotionally up, and prepared for this game when they know everything that's on the line? Obviously, that's sort of the answer, right? Here's the playoff. #1 seed in the playoff, everything's on the line. But it's still damn hard to stay emotionally invested for these 3 games in a row, and I think that's the bigger challenge for Ryan Day than the rematch.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing is, Wisconsin had to win out to get here, so they've kind of spent the same.
They've
type
already
of
been in the
emotion.
playoff.
Yeah, they've already they had people could poo-poo Minnesota all they want. Minnesota was a pretty good football team this year, not great but pretty good, and they had to win that game, a showdown in the snow, a snowdown, and they got the job done. But you're right. I mean, for both of these teams, they're probably like scratching their heads, like, wait a minute, we got to play these guys again, And I think even as sports writers and journalists, whatever you want to call us, the three besides the three musketeers, is you kind of would like to have seen Minnesota, because that'd be something totally different to deal with.
And that was part of the reason why maybe I was just secretly hoping for a new matchup for Ohio State, because I thought Minnesota would survive, and they got very close to doing so last week. But because just seeing this again, it's like it almost feels like it's exactly 2 years ago now that Justin Fields has a knee injury and the JT Barrett surgery. The parallels are not identical, but that was a team that had no business. That Wisconsin team had no business beating Ohio State, and they didn't. 59-0 was a couple years before that. I just want to see, I wanted to see something new. But in terms of this matchup, if it's going to be different than October, I guess the fact that Justin Fields is going to have that big knee brace on, he's not going to be able to run at the same level that he did earlier in the year or even in October. And that's kind of an intriguing subplot, but he is absolutely going to play. And I don't think that even if they have to use the Dwayne Haskins offense from last year,
Oh, no.
that was still pretty good.
Oh, no,
And I
not
think
that offense.
even with that,
Well, that's where
even with that knee brace, he's more mobile than
He
Dwayne.
got hurt throwing out of the Dwayne Haskins offense, which is interesting when people talk about quarterbacks in jeopardy. And, I get my buddy of mine was just going crazy. Why was he still in the game? What? It's a Michigan game. They're not up by 50 either,
I think
and
your
it's
buddy
like,
had been drinking
and
that
he
day.
threw from the pocket. Yeah, exactly. I mean, everybody in retrospect
Injuries
knows,
happen a whole lot more when a guy's standing still getting hit by a moving
Bingo.
target than when you're moving.
Bingo. And so, he had a brace on the knee. Now he's got a bigger brace on the knee. But and he was talking about the other day, I just keep thinking about, he came out of that tent with a new brace on, put his helmet on, went into the game, scrambled, made one of the great scrambling moves you'll ever see, and then threw a strike to Garrett Wilson. I'm not sure how hampered he is by the brace.
Yeah, he says that he's not quite the same, and I think if you're talking about
Of course he's not.
4.38 speed, you're not going to do it with that knee brace on. But in terms of still being able to run and move, I think Justin Fields will do that. I don't think he's going to be a stationary passer.
No, he doesn't need to be, but if he has to be, then the Buckeyes are still the better team. I mean, we've started to see the passing offense evolve in the last few weeks, but it hasn't really been able to go like full bore because the weather's been crappy pretty much every week.
Yeah.
You've seen the running game start to really pick up. You've seen J.K. Dobbins be leaned on. So if Justin Fields can get by this game by running 3 times, more power to him, more power to Ohio State. And I think that's the goal. I think you want to come out, and Urban always talked about 250, right? Go out and do that, and you win this game by 30 points.
Well, and you're going to have the most motivated running back that you could possibly have in J.K. Dobbins. Tim is going to write about that matchup again with Jonathan Taylor tomorrow, and it's got a new kind of wrinkle and element now that Jonathan Taylor was, again, the Big Ten running back of the year, and I think that was an absolute injustice, travesty. I demand a recount.
Well, here's the
There's
thing,
just
though,
there's just no way.
Yeah, but
even if you take the numbers, though, Tim, I know you've got them.
I know.
If you gave him the extra game, was it 29 carries that's different between it? That's a whole other game for J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah.
He would have topped him. Sorry to steal your thunder on that, but to me, it's crazy. He's the best back in the conference for sure.
Maybe just let J.K. play about 10 more plays in the second half and about 8 games. And
in the second half of Rutgers, he's going to get 100 yards.
And the other thing, but you can't sit here and gripe too much if you're an Ohio State fan, because Ryan Day did get named Coach of the Year. Hallelujah.
The streak is over.
First time since what was Earl Bruce in 1979.
Yeah, 40 years.
Yeah, and all he had to do was go 12-0 and win the Big Ten outright and go to the Rose Bowl. But it's crazy the standards you're held to. But yeah, I just think that is maybe, in my opinion, the number one storyline is Wisconsin's celebrated offensive line. I mean, speaking of being upset. I mean, Wisconsin center gets named.
Yeah, Josh Myers. Yeah.
And Josh Myers, in my opinion, is the best center in the Big Ten this year, from the games I watched, and including Wisconsin games.
Yeah.
And I know, how do you really pick those? I don't know. In my opinion, Josh Myers, every game has gotten better. Mm-hmm. And so you've got this offensive line, Ohio State's offensive line, with its star running back going but sizing up against their star offensive line and their star running back. And Ohio State, without a doubt, held sway the first time they went through that.
Herm, there's another snub that had you worked up yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff Okudah not being named the defensive back. I understand, the statistical numbers there are better for Antoine Winfield Jr. And
What are you watching? Yeah.
I mean, it's not a comparison. The simple facts are that Jeffrey Okudah is the best cornerback in the country. That's not subjective. That's objective fact. I mean, watch the tape. He's dominated on his side of the field in a way that we haven't seen a Buckeye cornerback do since 1996, in my opinion. It was just Sean Springs, and I know everyone wants to talk Antoine Winfield 2 years later in 98.
He was great.
But it's a different type of corner.
Yeah.
I mean, he played a different role. I mean, Antoine Winfield was coming up and stuffing the run 10 times a game.
Except for one matchup with Plexico Burris.
Well, that's what happens when you're 5'9". I mean, now, we're coming back to the Winfield name here, and obviously Antoine Winfield Jr. is not a guy that Buckeye fans should be, why this guy? Because
he's played extremely well.
He's played great, but I think that there's sometimes they give awards just because they don't want to give them all to one team. I mean, Iowa gave up 9 sacks and had 1 yard rushing against Michigan, and one of their offensive linemen was named the offensive lineman of the year.
Right.
That game alone should invalidate.
Look at Wisconsin's offensive line. Chase Young had that first game where everybody in the nation went, oh my goodness, this guy is Heisman worthy, against Wisconsin's celebrated offensive line. So, yeah, I see where you're going there.
And I don't think that it's rigged against him. Tim and I have both voted in these for years.
Yeah, I don't think it's rigged.
We know what it's like, but there are things that are just weird because Chase Young was not a unanimous first-team all-conference pick on one of those ballots, which is absolutely nuts. He's the best player
by a coach.
Most dominant. Yeah, by a coach didn't pick him. So to see him, his
wait a
name
minute,
out,
I'm trying to remember though. Are coaches allowed to vote for their guy?
If you get all 13, that's unanimous from outside.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. That's how they get around that.
That part is absolutely bonkers to me. But they didn't get completely snubbed.
Well, he had no tackles and no sacks against Michigan.
I've heard that. All right, well, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
He did have 2 quarterback hurries. I was going to mention that the voters did a good job.
Who voted? Yeah,
Michigan didn't do it. Gotcha.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows?
Sorry, Jim Harbaugh, but you got to take the L on that one too. But he came up short, obviously, last week by his own enormously high standards. I think we all watched that game and thought in the second half he was still having an impact.
Yeah.
He was still getting to Shea Patterson. I believe the final total was 4 of the last 26 for him.
But they did a great job on him in the first half, without a doubt.
I kind of asked him about that a little bit and what they were trying to do. And it's interesting to hear him talk about it because I know what film study is like with Coach Johnson. And so they were trying to take away the outside move and force him to go into a double team with the guard. And a lot of times he was getting this when he got there.
It's a lot of that.
But if you went outside, that's where the triple team could be from the back. And so well, you think that teams are going to use that against you from now on? And he said, there's going to be a solution.
Yeah.
I think we saw it in this Wisconsin game the first time.
Plus, he had to be totally aware, especially if he was on the edge, that Shea Patterson had shown the ability to move and run around a little bit more in recent games than he had maybe in the past. Mm-hmm. So you had to be totally aware of that too. But, without a doubt, Ohio State turned up the wick from a blitzing standpoint in the second half. Almost went with a totally different plan.
Right.
And you saw the effectiveness, and yes, he had a couple of 3 hurries on his own, and then what was Shea Patterson 4 out of 24?
Yeah, and it changed Michigan's game plan from the entire season, which is let Shea stay in the pocket and get time to throw it 20 yards down the field. He was 0 for 4 on attempts over 20 yards, and he only attempted 4 balls over 20 yards because he had to throw on 2 steps every time. But the fact is, and you said something on Twitter on Saturday, I think that if the officials aren't going to call it, just hold them every damn play because they're not going to call it every play.
Well,
put the onus on the officiating, and Penn State did it 2 weeks ago. Michigan certainly did it this past week. Wisconsin is going to do that again. I mean, Wisconsin's the Pittsburgh Steelers of college football. They never get called for a hold anyway. So you know that you may as well just grab a hold of the guy because you're not going to
like this.
Yeah, and they've done it.
Spencer, sorry, don't give me that look. Your Steelers are cheaters.
He won't speak out, but Chase Young has numerous times come off the field or pointed at had conversations with officials, pointed to James Franklin a couple weeks ago. I mean, he's getting frustrated by that, and it's a tough balancing act for him because, deep down he wants to get the sacks, obviously.
You don't want to be the squeaky wheel.
He does want to get to New York for the Heisman ceremony, even if he doesn't want to say it. He's a good teammate. He's a captain.
Yeah.
And they're winning games. He's fine with that. If you're getting triple teamed, well, then you're going to have Tyreek Smith or Zach Harrison or Jonathan Cooper last week or Devon Hamilton. They're all going to have opportunities, and he knows that. But it's tough, man. You're getting held, and you can't lift your arm.
But you know what? What's interesting about what you're saying too, though, is that's why Jeffrey Okudah, in my opinion, did get shortchanged, because to really appreciate Jeffrey Okudah, you've got to understand what he has meant to the defense.
Yeah.
He has meant they don't throw the ball over there very often.
Right.
I mean, he had a play on Saturday. That's why I gave it up to Hafley and the coverage packages he's brought in with the zone, much more zone. And he had a play on Saturday. It was early in that game where it was a third down play, and he lined up like he was in press man. And at the snap, he just hightailed it into like the basic left side zone and broke up a pass where coming to the line of scrimmage, Shea Patterson saw he had exactly the matchup he wanted on I think it was the tight end coming on a little flag route. Yeah. And as soon as Shea Patterson turned, he threw that ball without even looking. Ohio State had changed its defense. I mean, he had rolled into that zone. That should have been. But my point is, Okudah's been making plays like that all year, and/or forcing you to go the other side. That's an appreciation. Usually, the guys end up with a lot of picks if they're not a safety.
Mm-hmm. Or the guys getting thrown at all the time.
Guys getting thrown at. We all know that, and that's what people look at. Finally, when guys are scrambling to vote for all conference teams, you start looking through stats.
Who's got picks? Yep.
Yeah, but just to be honest with you, you don't get to watch every player of every game. But that's just like with Josh Myers not being the All Big Ten center. That's just in my opinion, that's a lack of appreciation of what this guy has done.
First-time starter, so nobody knew him in August, and that's part of it because you get in all of these preseason polls. You got media voters who have seen these names. Okay, they're in the preseason of the Big Ten. I know him. Mid-season, okay. But from start to finish, you're absolutely right about Josh Myers. I think the same is true for Wyatt Davis and Jonah Jackson. All three of those guys are playing at a really high level.
And then turn on the video of Wisconsin's offensive line and watch Devon Hamilton and Jayshon Cornell in that first meeting. Well, I know Chase had the big game statistically, but oh my goodness!
If there's one snub, the coaching staff, one member of the coaching staff, it's not hard to guess who it was, came up to me after practice today and said, "Why are there 4 defensive ends on the first team? Because it is an absolute injustice to Devon Hamilton that he is a third-team All-Big Ten performer. Name 2 defensive ends, name 2 defensive tackles, whatever. That's the direction they would like it to go because they know how good Devon Hamilton has been and how important he's been to the defense. And it's another situation where if you're scrolling through as a voter, like he's got 5 sacks.
There's 2 positions on the defensive line. There's end and then there's tackle. So just vote for 2 each. It seems pretty simple.
Well, they quit doing that a long time ago, and I remember because I voted those things.
The Big Ten has just lost its marbles.
It's almost like it was too tedious for people to do that much homework. It's literally what it comes down to. I mean, what you do is, like I told you, remember my famous line to Nick Bosa one time?
Then don't vote.
I told you my famous line to Nick Bosa was, the great thing about being a defensive end, you make 1 or 2 plays a game, and people think you've had a hell of a game, you know?
That's also true. All right, so let's stop breaking down all the snubs here and get to you guys' predictions here. First time I've heard them. I'll start with you this week, Berm, because you've been quiet over here for the last couple minutes. I know you've been thinking exactly what you got cooked up here.
I really feel like this can go very similar to the last 2 Big Ten championship games. If the Buckeyes come out and play conservative because of Justin Fields' knee, then I think that you could see a 31-14 type final, something that is comfortable but not necessarily what people are expecting to see. I also think that 45-21 like last year against, that was 45-24, but somewhere in that range is also on the table because I think the Buckeyes are going to go over the top and really stretch Wisconsin vertically, and I don't think they can stop them. So I think you could see a really big day out of Justin Fields through the air. Maybe not 6 touchdowns and 500 yards like Dwayne did last year against Northwestern, but I think you could see a pretty big game. I don't see the Buckeyes failing to cover. I think, 16, 17, 18, somewhere in there. 45-21, I think, is probably where I'll settle.
I'm going with what Justin Fields blurted after the first game. I'm going with that as gospel because, anybody watching that game, you could see the possibilities if Ohio State got to be the greatest show on turf, which didn't get to be in that game because of the weather, but I could see Ohio State getting to 50. I mean, they just scored 56 on their hated rival, and you could see where they were handcuffed in that first game with Wisconsin, even though they ended up scoring 38.
Right.
But I could see something in the 50 to like 13 to 17 range because this defense is, in my opinion, psyched to do it all over again. I mean, and by the way, I mean a third time of making life hell for Jonathan Taylor and making Wisconsin beat you, quote unquote, left-handed, even though Cone is right-handed. I think, isn't he? Hornibrook was left-handed.
Yeah, Hornibrook and that flutter ball that didn't really work out that well. I think 56-10 sounds about right, somewhere in your neighborhood there, Tim. We'll see what it. Man, you just can't believe it, can you? That's how good this team has been.
It's hard to believe.
Did you hear the key phrase that Ryan Day said about Justin Fields? He's going to play the whole game.
Right.
Or he's going to play all game.
I'm just struggling to believe.
You understand what
I'm struggling to believe why. I'm just struggling to believe that people asked if he was going to start.
Yeah. I was just sometimes you just kind of go, okay, I guess you got to get it on the record. But I mean, these people, like I've said, one of my friends who was talking about, why is he even in there? I'm just going, it's the rivalry game number 2. This game isn't over.
It was 35-16.
Exactly.
You've got to start drinking our way.
What's he doing throwing the ball? I'm going, what do you mean? What's he doing throwing the ball?
You want him running it instead?
As Austin Mack said, Austin Mack caught the ball. He was wide open. That's why you're throwing it. It just drives me crazy sometimes, but that's life.
Right.
I digress.
You got that one in.
Yeah.
This is that time when I lose control of the practice report brought to you by Byers Auto, and I need to wrap it up. That's been Tim May. That's Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. We have full coverage coming for the Big Ten title in Indianapolis. LettermenRow.com. We will see you there. Ohio State, Wisconsin, Saturday night.
Friday afternoon, right? Press conference.
I don't think they care about that.
You guys totally care.
This show is over. We'll see you there.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe below to get the latest videos from Lettermen Row.
We got Letterman Live, we've got the practice report, we got rapid reaction. Hey, and you know we got Buck IQ with Zach Bourne.
For sure. We got recruiting breakdowns with Berm. We got whatever you need. Ohio State football and Ohio State athletics, we've got you covered here at Lettermen Row.